Hello, my name is Josh Gilliland, attorney blogger on Bowtie Law. Thank you for joining us today for this special presentation from Kroll Ontrack on their new product suite, ediscovery.com review. With me is Andrea Gibson, who is a litigator. She misses complex civil litigation. She's a native Texan and now is learning about snow. Andrea, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Josh. Thanks very much for meeting with me today to talk about ediscovery.com review.
Let's rock and roll.
Right.
I enjoyed my first peek at it the other day, and I really think others need to check it out. So let's talk about the state of eDiscovery and then jump into the demo. So we've had a bunch of cool cases this year. What do you think is one of the more important ones when it comes to eDiscovery?
I would say that the Biomet case, which started to bring predictive coding out of traditional review, moving it left on the EDRM into the culling and filtering range. Because as we have entered the predictive coding era, relying on keyword culling and filtering, old school, prior to the use of the new technology, there was a disconnect there. So the Biomet case really brought into focus that you don't have to use old technology, the old keyword culling and filtering as a first cut. There is not only a hybrid way of using keywords with predictive coding, but what we've done with ediscovery.com review is make it possible and cost effective to use predictive coding far to the left on the EDRM for culling itself. So Biomet, I'd say, is really the pinnacle case right now because it's starting to expand technology-assisted review, predictive coding across the EDRM, not just smack dab in the middle.
I agree. That is one of the more important search-related cases. There's been a bunch of other ones, but I fully agree. This is one that we could do an entire webinar talking about that case.
That would be fun.
It would be. We can dare to dream. So, well, let's show me the new toy. Show me how ediscovery.com review works.
Absolutely. Let me share my screen.
Beautiful.
How does that look?
Great. It's
perfect. This is ediscovery.com review. It's important to note that although this is a brand new complete solution from Kroll Ontrack through ediscovery.com, we want to make sure that everybody understands that we have the foundation and the basics of all review platforms. We have, of course, all manner of search, both regular search, concept searching, even searching across predictive coding and technology-assisted review. We've got find similar, concept searching, all manner of machine language identification and translation, and a very simple platform that you can use multi-monitors for, drag and drop your various panes, however makes the most sense to you. So it is, at its foundation, a very solid, very robust, easy to use EDA, early data assessment and review application. And on top of that, some really innovative features that move it further left so that you are able to have immediate data analysis across your entire corpus. You've got one complete solution, culling and filtering early data assessment review, and then also being able to use technology-assisted review throughout. So it's meant to be a one-size-fits-all, even though there is no such thing on any particular case. So let's jump in and take a look at some of the more innovative cost features as well as robust power features. You can see from our viewer here that it contains, even as text alone, some basic formatting. So even text alone looks like a native document would. On this particular matter, you'll see that I do not have the native in the database. I also don't have the review image available. Our predictive coding, and of course all of our searches, work perfectly well with just the text alone. That enables clients to radically shrink their volume footprint from 100% down to probably 30% of expected volume, while still retaining the full power of searching, coding, predictive coding. And if you decided that you did, in fact, need the native for this or any other files, No problem at all. Just request that native. We'll tell you what the potential volume increase would be, which would be just a sliver. And then within just a few seconds, you will have your native appear, or image, or whatever the request would be. Now, the request document format works on onesie twosies, as well as any multiples of files, and could also work equally well on search folders or any assigned folders that an admin would send to you. So it's meant to be as micro-focused or as macro-focused as makes the most sense for your particular review. So beyond that, and here you can see that now we have the native. And typically you'd see this happen in just a split second to a few seconds, and they're available for your immediate use and consumption. Now let's say, for instance, that you don't need any of these documents. They're messing up your database or bloating it, it's interrupting your search results, and perhaps it's even skewing your predictive voting algorithms. All you have to do is simply right-click and send it to a nearline storage location. In this case, I give it a title that would make sense to me, and I'm going to remove it from my database. So you'll see down at the bottom, I've got 169 files in this particular search folder. When I remove it nearline, they'll disappear almost immediately. I can remove 100,000 files from my active database in 35 seconds. That's why when you combine the document format technology, where we're shrinking the volume footprint, and then we're giving clients the ability to remove data from their database, we're making it possible to not rely on keyword culling and filtering. It is extremely cost effective to have a very large corpus of data here with a small volume footprint that you then can clean up. So here you see that my volume has decreased by 10 files. And just in case you wanted to retrieve any of that data, not a problem. We have here our database pane where you're able to toggle back and forth between your active database and your nearline storage. You can slice and dice to pick and choose whatever data you want to find or run metrics on, or potentially retrieve back to your active database. So in this instance, I have Robert Benson files, and you can see that based on the choices I've made here, I can determine the business applications. We have these from Robert Benson. If I know now that these files need to come back into the active database, perhaps there's been an amended pleading, retrieve them. You have the option also of retrieving any work product formerly associated with those files. We automatically preserve all work product, and then it would be up to the client to determine whether or not it comes back. If you're retrieving data from Nearline on Wednesday, after nearlining it on Tuesday, that work product is probably still valid. But if data has been sitting in Nearline for 12 months, 18 months, the case may have changed so drastically as you may want to jettison that work product and start from scratch. You can see here that the data is retrieving back into the active database, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. What I'd like to do, though, is switch back to my active database, and you'll see here that for emails are, of course, always the most fun, as well as oftentimes the most important files in any review project. I have all of the documents associated with email for this matter, and this is just a portion of the Enron database, of course. So I have approximately 102,000 emails, and they are separated by different custodians. Now, if I'm interested in each of these documents, that's all well and good, but perhaps if I'm an administrator and I don't really need to know the nitty-gritty of each document, I can switch from my document view to metrics and literally at a glance see and take action upon any highlighted node. So for instance, if I'm highlighted on email, I know that I've got roughly 102,000 emails, what the volume impact would be, the number of documents, and how they're broken down across the custodian, as well as representing volume for text only, volume where natives have been requested, and if in fact any image files have been requested. So whether you want to see the documents, perhaps even take action on them, see the metrics, and slice and dice your entire database on the fly, complete flexibility and control at your fingertips. One of the other items that has proven to be exceptionally powerful for our beta clients is our topic grouping functionality. And this is using latent semantic analysis, where our processing engine literally reads every character of your data, understands how characters relate to each other to become words, how words relate to each other to become phrases, and then puts them into buckets of data that make sense. So it's unsupervised learning, where you can choose the number of parent buckets, children buckets, and the number of labels that will make the most sense to you. Interestingly, in one of the beta projects that we've had recently, the small matter, just 13,000 files, using topic grouping alone, not even touching some of the new functionality, went from 13,000 files to the 286 that actually mattered in 6 minutes. So really providing cost-effective value solutions with near immediate responsiveness. What do you think so far?
That's impressive. And a lot of folks have focused on predictive coding and advanced analytics on just the big cases, but I think they're going to be the game changer for the solos and the small firms and for matters in state court. And e-discovery marketing folks often just outright ignore 93% of litigation in this country, focusing on the blue whale litigation.
Right.
And if you're a solo practitioner and you got a case with 20,000 email messages and loose files, that's a lot to the solo. It's small to a service provider, but with the predictive coding, they could get their review done in a day.
Absolutely. And typically also with small matters or with smaller firms, they may not have the budget to typically go straight to a large service provider and use any of their fancy tools. With us, predictive coding is offered at no charge, and we're highly scalable. In fact, the smallest ever matter that we've had in one of our databases, believe it or not, was just 16 pages of, I believe, 4 files. And for whatever reason, the client felt that an electronic solution was going to be best. And of course, from that, we scale up to hundreds of millions of pages and documents. So this is now a very cost-effective and powerful solution. There's no getting around electronic discovery, and now it's available to all.
Oh, it's beautiful because, and again, this is something that, like you and I and everyone else in this space has to highlight. We have to get over the lawyers who think e-discovery is just prohibitively expensive, so they're just going to do it wrong and commit malpractice. And getting them to understand, you can afford to do this, you have to do it because that's just the reality of practicing. It'd be like not doing legal research.
Exactly, and we are moving to the day where failure to use electronic discovery, failure to use predictive coding will become negligence, and sanctions, negative inference, they will flow. So,
agreed. There's no way around it. Because it'd be like saying, I don't know how to type. I don't know how to write a brief, because this is the framework of finding the truth about the matter, which is the entire point of being in a lawsuit. Correct.
Absolutely. Bringing in an Excel file here momentarily just to show the difference between, of course, Excel never looking pleasant with text alone and what the native would look like. So that should be here momentarily. And one thing to also note, specifically for database files or Excel and numeric heavy files, when you're in your database pane, you're able to make decisions holistically, even on large nodes of requesting document formats. So again, onesie-twosie or as macro as makes sense.
Now, do you have reporting features in this? So if a search is challenged on how we found this Excel, that we could, export it out and attach it to an affidavit for a judge to understand what was done?
Absolutely. For whether it's a search or whether it is any number of reports that we have available. So here you can see We have probably 35 canned reports available and work with our clients on custom reports if need be, but case data in terms of what your entire database looks like, how your predictive coding progress is, how reviewers are specifically doing within the project, who's coding too quickly, who's not quite understanding it, what your productions look like, and then for any search, you'll be able to export a keyword hit report, assuming that it was actually, the search was run on keywords, to determine how much volume, how many unique hits, what type of files, and how many custodians were actually at issue for any search. So reporting and being able to export reports, really key and critical for us. We want to make sure that the repeatability and defensibility is paramount and available for our clients.
Very cool. So one of my pet peeves and concerns about the practice right now are you get those who want to follow the Rader model order in all civil litigation that says we will limit custodians and limit searches without doing any due diligence, without looking at a data set.
Right.
And trying to order the chaos away, which generally makes more chaos.
It does.
It's horrible. One of the other ones I saw, somebody went out and they got a case management order and they were the plaintiffs.
Okay.
They then said, like, hey, we want to use predictive coding on all this to cut it down to size. It's like, right on, you're going the right way, dude. Let's see that.
Right. Sounds good so far.
Hats off to you, buddy. And then you look at the CMO and everything's like TIFF with a little metadata.
No.
And it's just like, why did you do this? You now need good cause to get metadata that you now wrote into this that the judge just signed off on. You've just made this harder to do. And
you really have. And it's important, I think, for people to realize that with predictive coding, as with anything else, there is no perfect. There is no one-size-fits-all. And one of the things we've done, in addition to building the most robust and we think powerful predictive coding technology available, is making it flexible enough so it can be appropriate with the uniqueness of any particular practitioner or case. So here you can pick and choose what data goes into predictive coding. You don't have to pick all or nothing. You determine the experience level and the roles and responsibilities of your trainers and reviewers. You determine how families of documents are going to be handled, what margin of error you want to select, and it's dynamic. So as the case moves along, you can change this and determine what's appropriate at that point in time. In addition, even your learning strategy, as well as being able to use any number of metrics, whether precision, recall, F-measure for any of your categories that are at issue, and along the way, receive notification when different thresholds are met of either variance or agreement or goals that you've set for yourself.
Very cool. Now, could that tie into ediscovery.com manage and the alerts go there instead of to an email inbox?
Absolutely. In fact, that is on our horizon. So right now, Manage is focused on volumes and cost metrics, but within probably the next few releases, we will have reviewer progress as well as predictive coding progress notes available through Manage.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
With the note about the parent-child relationship, that's generally with email. Are you seeing text messages come in with video files and pictures and maintaining that parent-child relationship?
We are seeing more of that, but it still has not quite reached the level of importance according to most cases that come our way. I think we're still trying to sweep it under the rug, or not, that's a bad analogy. It's just not getting the focus that email and loose documents are getting. They're there, and oftentimes what we found is when corporations or law firms are keen to preserve and include that data, either the phone has gone dead for too lengthy of a time for the data to still exist in cache, or the SIM card's been removed, and somebody has taken actions to wipe the phone. So they're there, but they are still harder to preserve and collect and process than traditional email or loose files.
Plus, I would expect to see those more so in PI cases, even though those should still go in a review database, or employment harassment type ones as well.
They will, but also theft of intellectual property, insider trading, it does apply to the larger cases. We are so used to text messaging that we don't have the guidelines on ourselves. We don't check ourselves in terms of thinking that this may be discoverable, this may be collected by my employer and used at some point. So
yeah, we won't even touch BYOD. We won't even.
no, we're getting there though, and it's going to be messy, but it is unavoidable.
Stephen Wu just wrote a new book about that from the ABA, and he's an attorney in Los Altos, California. I haven't read it yet, but he's a friend, and I think it's the first book on it for its legal issues. So I think that's going to be required reading for a lot of people very, very quickly.
I would agree. I recently met with a colleague of mine in Washington State who litigates based on the insurance company technology that people attach to their car to determine how safe their driving is. So is that discoverable? How will it be used? What if I'm not the one driving, but it is my car? There is so much technology out there that touches literally every aspect of our lives. So we are not at the point where e-discovery is old hat. There are still new beasts being discovered every day.
Yeah, I've actually talked about that with, I did a presentation with two judges, one federal, one state, and both of them said, yeah, it would come in, no question about it.
Yeah.
And at one of our civil practice committee meetings here in Silicon Valley, I mentioned that to the 4 state court judges in a meeting, and all 4 of them kind of pushed back at once and went, oh, ew.
Yeah, I've seen those commercials on TV. You mean that counts too?
I mean, like you could literally see the gears turning, and they all basically hit the same conclusion at the same amount of time. Like, yeah, that would come in, and they were probably surprised lawyers haven't tried that yet.
Not yet, but it is coming, and it will be soon.
Exactly.
Very soon.
So I'm liking what I see in the database. It's pretty, it's user-friendly, and I take it we could undock Windows for those who like to have 2 monitors so you can review and have the database on separate screens.
Absolutely. I don't know that I would survive without 2 monitors. And given the brilliant engineers that I work with day in, day out, and seeing some of them with 4 and 5 monitors,
wow,
it can be pretty crazy. So yes, you can have them however makes the most sense to you. Again, building in the flexibility for any particular reviewer, however he or she thinks is going to be the most helpful.
Next thing you know, you'll be dragging it to Google Glass while you're also working on 3 monitors. And
I think you figured us out, Josh.
You laugh, but I know it's going to happen.
It absolutely will,
and,
as it should.
You know,
I just hope that nobody's doing doc review while driving, drinking coffee, and texting.
Yeah, I hope not. But everyone wants to play Minority Report at some point and float around and move screens and everything.
Yeah, exactly. It will happen.
Cool. Well, this is really a slick interface, and I like what I see. Is there anything else that you want to show me?
There's lots of stuff that I think is fascinating and folks will find very, very interesting. We have, of course, communication analytics, so it's easy to see who's talking about what, whether they're custodians in a matter, internal context, external. And this is very helpful when people are sending company data to their Gmail or Yahoo accounts. You can actually find and sort and search by all that and issue any preservation orders that you need to there. So,
see that Puerto Rico case where that was discussed last month?
I have not seen that one yet.
So for about 7 years, they had all these corporate executives in Puerto Rico who were, in addition to having the work email addresses, they also sent management instructions from their personal accounts.
Nice. Oh, wow.
And it was known that they were doing it, and people were following orders doing that. So therefore,
oh,
there was
gosh.
a duty to preserve those personal emails, and the court actually said there would have been control over the personal accounts because of that. Raises all kinds of weird issues from the Stored Communication Act and compelling them to turn over passwords for preservation, but
Right.
duty to preserve
And
regardless.
above and beyond that, I think the rules should follow pretty much how they're deciding privilege on that issue as well. I mean, beyond the Stored Communications Act, which I think we all know is antiquated and not dynamic enough to really be flexible to work with text messaging and voice messaging. But so long as Gmail and Yahoo accounts are going to be considered privileged communications, even if you're using your work computer and your work server, it seems to me that's not a large leap to consider them within the control and the range of duty for preservation on work instructions.
Yeah, it gets, we could write a book on that one because it's, privilege isn't dead,
No.
but you shouldn't be doing that from work. So it gets into really odd issues very quickly. But you also get the relevance issue. I mean, if somebody's at work and they're emailing, they're setting up a doctor's appointment, that it's not relevant. And so you get that half of it too. So
Absolutely. But the rest of it, the smoking guns and the exculpatory information, that alone is worth preserving because it's not just the smoking guns folks are looking for. They're also looking for the exculpatory information. So to the extent they're using communication mechanisms outside of the corporate server or the corporate cloud agreement, it can be very helpful, not just harmful.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm just too old school and too much of a stickler.
Yeah, it's just, if you have your iPhone or your Android, don't have it on the work network.
Correct.
If your spouse is texting you to pick up milk on the way home, they don't need to know that.
No, and admittedly, I mean, you brought up BYOD earlier, but I still carry around two phones. I have my personal device and I have my work phone, and there the two shall meet, at least not yet. Maybe I can be convinced down the road, but for right now, I've got my work life and I've got my non-work life.
And that's what I encourage people. Generation Y disagrees, but that's what I encourage people.
Agreed. So far, Generation Y haven't been the custodians in much electronic discovery yet, so perhaps their tune will change in 5 to 10 years.
They'll learn the hard way. So I see the first communication pattern here. Could you show me the timeline on how that looks?
Oh, absolutely. And this is interesting because you can see, let me actually get rid of this pane and make a little more real estate. You can see when communications and emails get hot and when they fall off. And above and beyond that, for any of the communication lines, which again, we are looking at that, just being able to browse and look at the subject line of any emails. And this is where people will have different opinions. A colleague of mine and I argue all the time that whenever he would find the got a second or have a minute emails, he'd just ignore them completely. Whereas I immediately hone in on them in terms of what was so important that you didn't want to write anything else in your email, but you clearly wanted to discuss it. So it gives people the opportunity to be as granular, again, as you want to be, or as broad. And if you want to consider even just groups of them, that's fine too. So whether it's quick glance at the subject, knowing what the timeline would be, and we can move that around also to see just all communications. So here with the Enron data, of course, the dates have been scrubbed slightly and it's a skewed force, but you'll find in an actual live matter, the communications are very natural in following curves as you would expect.
Plus, you could also analyze on a production, if there's something like a month or a couple days that are empty, a production gap.
Absolutely, makes perfect sense. And all of this information, of course, using the communication analytics is exportable, both the image as well as information underlying it. So
cool.
Switched nodes, and it's powerful. It's not so powerful as to be overwhelming because we have made it very intuitive and useful. So easy to use, still all the flexibility and power that you could ever want at your fingertips. And here you can see where I could include all of this information and report to myself.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, that's as it should be. These are the things that we need to work and practice law with. So
absolutely.
good. Well, my compliments to you. Is there any other bells and whistles that you want to show me?
I think we're good. As I said, we've got all of the basics that everybody should assume by now. So even looking at near dupes, looking at full email threads, even for machine translation and language identification, being able to have keyboards, Japanese or Chinese keyboards, available virtually for reviews. So there's a lot here, but not, again, so much that you would trip over it or find it cumbersome. Very intuitive, very user-friendly, and I'm glad you agree, at least at first glance.
Yeah, and I look forward to, getting to play with it and testing it out.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. Why don't we secure the screen so that way we can have the closing questions, since this does go on my Geek YouTube channel. There are always Geek questions that we should ask. So let's stop the screen share, and there you are back.
Okay.
So you've admitted you are also a Trekkie. So
I am, and now you've published that to the world. Now everybody knows. There's my dork secret.
It's quite all right. You're in a safe place. Others have admitted this as well, and it's all good.
Good, amongst friends.
I think there are about 800 opinions with Star Trek references in them that court judges have done. So judges have liked Star Trek and Star Wars for a very long time.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite alien from the Star Trek series?
Oh, my. I would have to say, because I grew up watching the old Star Trek. Now, mind you, that wasn't my generation Star Trek. It was still my mom's generation, my dad's generation. I found it both intriguing and hilarious, because even by then, technology and green screens had changed so much. So the one that gave me the biggest laughs were that huge rock creature that was fighting Kirk on the desolate planet, and the rock creature picking up a rock to try and kill Kirk, and his shirt is ripped, and it was just ridiculous, but still exciting, and you wondered if he was going to survive or how he would survive, which red shirt would die in an effort to save him.
The Gorn. You're talking about the arena.
Yes.
And
so second only to the Tribbles in terms of cuteness and hilarity.
So with that, with the next Star Trek movie, what villain or challenge do you want to see in it?
Gosh, they did a really good job, I have to admit, with Khan. They scripted it very well.
I loved Into Darkness, and I loved the 2009 reboot, but there was a commonality between the two, and that is the Enterprise goes up against a ship that's bigger and badder than it, and they have to do strategy to fight it. I would like to see something more along the lines of Balance of Terror, and being able to have an enemy that's evenly matched, so it's more about strategy and the chessboard in space with the fight. And I do think the Gorn would be a great villain because we haven't seen them on screen.
True.
And
but what if you blended your sci-fi? Because if you think about switching from old school Star Trek to new Star Trek, so you go to Jean-Luc Picard and whether he would be assimilated, so looking at the Borg, but then switch and let's talk Stargate and some of the new Stargate folks. So you've got the replicators and the little, what if you go smaller, but still a very powerful enemy rather than larger?
That would make nice. There are different ways you could spin that and the different challenges because, Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager all had the micro type, challenge that they had to face or the computer coming to life. I would just, since they basically repeated the same formula for the opposing ship.
Yes. Even
though Into Darkness worked in Klingons, there's a reference to Gorn, a couple other uber geek references that they were able to slide in as well, that it would just be do something we haven't seen. That would be my one wish for the next.
They've done such a good job. I think you may get your wish.
We'll see. I'm not on the creative staff. I would be happy to happy to tag in. So happy to tag in, or for Star Wars, happy to do that too.
There you go, exactly. And what's interesting is bringing it all back to the eDiscovery world. Resistance is futile. It is here and it's not going away. So I think it's time for folks to take advantage of the cost-effective tools available to them.
Exactly. Well, Into Darkness had a computer forensics issue and an eDiscovery issue, just stuck nicely in there.
That's right.
You can't watch Let's Geek Out Arrow, which has tons of e-discovery and computer forensic issues that magically one, very talented IT person is able to tackle. But
And immediately too.
Really, she's good at cybersecurity? Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, anyway, we've shown our geek flag pretty.
We have flown it high.
And proud. So I would encourage people to check out ediscovery.com. I'm sure there'll be other updates and cool things coming out. And
Definitely.
This is first time getting to hang out with my friends at Kroll Ontrack, so I've really had a lot of fun. And Andrea, stay geeky.
No doubt about it. You too, Josh. Thank you so much.
Take care now.
You too.